Minister of Energy and Electricity, Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, who's currently briefing the media reflecting on the key achievements and challenges that the energy landscape experienced in the year. I understand he's on the podium now. Let's listen in.
If you like, the journey that we have traveled and also the kind of performance that we are seeing, one, and two, share with you what are the immediate outlook of generation performance going into the future. And then the third aspect is to share with you the issues around the preferred bid windows, as mentioned earlier, just the announcement on bid window number 7, and also bid window number 2 on battery storage. These are important because they are an affirmation of the fact that we need new generation capacity. We want to bring on stream different types of technologies to ensure that we are able to achieve our decarbonization ambitions as articulated in our nationally determined contributions. Remember that we have made a promise to our people first and also to the world that we do appreciate that 80% of generation capacity in this country, electricity, comes from fossil fuels. So we've got a responsibility that we are able to address issues of air quality, which has got a significant health implication for those people who are living within the immediate proximity of or radius, within a particular radius of this power station. So we have that responsibility to the health of our people. And then secondly, we also have a responsibility to ensure that we reduce the CO2 emissions as part of that global agenda of addressing the scourge of climate change. So science has illustrated that there is at least a correlation between these emissions, greenhouse gas emissions, and also climate change. So as the most industrialized economy on the continent, accounting for a third of the emissions, and globally less just about 0.9% of the total emissions. We still think we are of the opinion that we have that responsibility. Of course, the major industrialized powers of the global north have got a disproportionate responsibility, including financing this transition. But first and foremost, we owe it to our people. That's the point I want to make. So the bid windows in relation to solar and wind helps to articulate the kind of mix that we want to have. So we're not relenting on that front. So it's important that we intensify, if anything, intensify that effort of ensuring that we are able to have a new generation capacity. And this has been enabled, of course, going into the future by the amendment of the principal piece of legislation, which is the Electricity Regulation Act. And I'm sure a lot of you would have seen that is going to come into operation from the 1st of January 2025. And consistent with any piece of legislation, I'll also be releasing the regulations. So the issue of regulations that support the enactment of legislation is common practice in government. So I want to make that point clear. So in relation to generation performance, I think it is important to, at this point, just to applaud the work that the generation team has been able to execute at the Eskom. You remember that we started from an exceptionally low base. By low base, I mean the calendar year 2023, and we're able to show also the financial year 24. That is starting from the 1st of April 2023, ending the last day of March 2024. We had seen the highest intensity of load shedding in terms of the number of days that we experienced load shedding and the number of hours that the country was subjected to periods of no electricity. And that had correlation with the generation the financial performance. If you are not generating, you don't have a product to sell. If you don't have a product to sell, then you are not in a position to earn any revenue. And you have seen the numbers that Eskom was announcing last week, that we recorded a significant loss, but we also are showing that as a result of this improved performance, our projection is that we should be at a minimum achieving about a 10 billion rand surplus by the end of the financial year. So what is the story of calendar year. So we have seen that at least on the 23rd of December, in fact now, the 23rd of December, essentially we are recording another milestone in that we are experiencing the longest stretch of uninterrupted power supply in 5 years. So it's an important milestone. And like I said, we are not celebrating the fact that we have not had 272 days of load shedding. We are simply marking the point that in terms of our quest to end load shedding, it's important that we are able to take account of these small milestones, if you like. So these are small steps that are going to contribute to a giant leap that we want to achieve. What is that giant leap? Is to ensure that we have sufficient capacity that will support the growth of the South African economy. So the end result of our work is not about just ending load shedding. It's a minimum but not sufficient requirement for us to achieve energy sovereignty. But it's important that we take account of this work that we are doing. So for every milestone that we register, I think it's something internally that we are able to elevate, just a confirmation that we are on the right track. So like I said, the 23rd of December today is in fact another milestone that we have achieved. And what are some of the manifestations of this performance is that we have been able to experience the reduction in what we call unplanned capacity loss factor. So essentially, the degree to which these units are failing on their own and the degree to which these units are not performing efficiently. So the intention there is to bring down that number. Once you bring down that number of UCLF, it means then we have more megawatts on the grid. So we have seen an improvement of about 8.1 percentage points. So this time, last year we're sitting at about 33.1% of UCLF. Now we're sitting at 24.9 UCLF. So what that means is that we've got more generating capacity on the grid, and it's as a result of the sterling work that the team has been able to achieve. And I'll share with you what they underpin that sterling work, because it's important that the Eskom lessons, they are able to help us to generate a template on how you are able to recover from a very difficult situation. So it's a template you can take to any of the SOEs, of course, adapt it to the particular nuances of that particular SOEs, but I think that transversal, if you like, experiences that can be drawn from the Eskom experience, and I'll share with you what those transversal elements are. And from the megawatt terms, the unplanned outages averaged about 11.6 gigawatts in the past 7 days, compared to the similar period of about 12.3 megawatts. So I'm talking about last year, and that's why we're beginning to see, if you like, the curve moving in the right direction. But if you look at what has been the recovery from the intensity of load shedding that we had experienced, remember, we're recording losses of up to 18,000 megawatts, and now we're averaging, as we're indicating, about 11.6 megawatts. So we've been able to claw back more than 6,000 megawatts available on the grid. And this makes it possible for us to be able to absorb any failures like we have experienced the incident at Matla. If you have a cluster of units failing, you have generated significant headroom for you to be able to absorb such kind of incidents without necessarily having to resort to load shedding. And I'll also share with you what has been the immediate past performance. At least the past week or so, we've had these failures, and we have not seen any initiation of load shedding because the team had built that sufficient runway. And from an energy availability factor, so the efficiency of the performance of the grid in its totality, we are seeing that from the period, the 1st of April until the 19th of December this year, so we have seen an average of 62.5%, which is an improvement from what was about 55.4% of performance. So that's the kind of improvement that we're beginning to see going into the future, and it's something that we want to sustain over an extended period of time. What does that mean in rand value terms? So it means that as a result of this performance, we've been able to save about 16.6 billion rands just from stopping us from burning diesel. So we have spent 16.06 billion less than what was the spend the similar period last year. But just the beginning of December until the 19th, we have seen an increased use of diesel as a result of those incidents that I've shared with you, the incident at Matla and some of the units just delaying coming back. But I'm saying you have not seen load shedding because we have built a sufficient runway for us to be able to absorb this, and we're confident that, again, the team is doing everything possible to ensure that we are able to sustain this performance going into the future. So this is significant because once we are able to reduce the cost associated with diesel, it means that Eskom is becoming a more efficient generator of electricity. We are able to sustain this over a period of time. Is going to find itself in tariff applications going into the future because we are becoming more and more efficient, and we are able to pass on this benefit to the end consumer. So we want ultimately this 16 billion should not be sitting with the Eskom. It should be in the pockets of the consumer because those are the kind of efficiencies that we would have realized, and it's going to support the South African economy, making sure that the production and the manufacturing that relies on electricity also becomes more efficient, and in fact our goods are becoming a bit more competitive when they come into the market, whether the domestic market or the international market. I think it's important that we are able to have that appreciation. So what has been the driver of the performance that we are seeing? So when we started this exercise, we thought that it's important that you must have a plan. So you know that the overarching plan that directed the work that we're doing is that the Energy Action Plan that the President introduced in 2022. And what the President did was to ensure that there's leadership to execute on that plan. So the appointment of the Eskom board, the new board led by Dr. Mteto, and also the stabilization of management. Now, Mr. Caleb Kasim led this process, that transition process, until a period where Eskom was able to appoint a permanent group CEO. But also during that interim period, what the board and Mr. Kasim did was to ensure that we've got stability at some of our key power stations. And I'll share with you what those key power stations are and what defines key in this instance. That there must be stability there. You get people with the right skills and competence and also experience to be able to recover those power stations. So leadership was important in the execution of that plan. So the President articulated the plan. That plan has 5 outcomes. Outcome number 1 is the one that directly relates to Eskom, which has to do with ensuring that we are able to improve the energy availability factor, the performance of the installed capacity at Eskom. That it's particularly unhelpful to think in the immediate of new generation capacity when in fact you've got the sunk cost, installed a fleet of generators that were not performing. So the best turnaround, the shortest path to relieving us of load shedding was to ensure that you increase that performance. So that gets to be articulated in that plan. And on the back of that plan, then you get the leadership that is able to support that plan. So from an Eskom side, the board and also management, but also the President took an extraordinary step of ensuring that he appoints an executive authority just transfixed on the resolution of load shedding. So almost, if you like, dealing with the load shedding problem as if you are dealing with a project. And I had made the point earlier on that what underpins the work that we've been doing is a project management approach to a resolution of a problem. So not necessarily seeing yourself as in a classic sense as a minister, but someone who must get their hands dirty and making sure that there's great levels of alignment between the technical side and also the political side, and ensuring that we execute against the plan, we measure our performance against the plan. You remember I used to make the point where when we're experiencing highest intensity of load shedding, that the short-term pain, long-term gain. Made the point that we needed to take the units out to ensure that we fix them, and when they return, we're all going to see the fruits of that effort. And we're beginning to see that. I'm saying we're beginning to see it because we want to sustain this beyond 272 days. We want to make it just an abnormal conversation for us to even have a discussion about 272 days of no load shedding. It must become a common practice. It's an expectation that there shouldn't be load shedding in a most industrialized economy such as ours, with the size of the installed fleet that we had. And then what we did was that we isolated power stations. So there were power stations that were our best performance, the primary anchors of ensuring that there is some supply of electricity to the country. Even if you had stage 6, stage 5, various stages of load shedding, there were periods, significant periods in the day where electricity was provided. And we took a view that these stations needed to be protected. What are these stations? Letabo, Midupi, Matimba, and the picking stations. They played a big part in ensuring that we relieve ourselves of the degree of the intensity of load shedding. Yes, load shedding was present. Load shedding had a devastating impact on the South African economy, the lived experiences of ordinary people. But it would have been worse if we dropped the ball and not protect these assets that were giving us the kind of performance that we're getting, and ensuring that at least the economy keeps on going and we minimize the harm that is inflicted on the South African economy. And then we said there's a second category of power stations. So these are power stations that are responsible for 70% at the time, responsible for 70% of the total losses. So instead of being all over the place, wanting to fix everything, you end up achieving nothing. We said that let's isolate these power stations for particular attention. And I'm saying that isolating them was on the basis of the fact that together they contributed about 70% of the total losses. There's something in science, we call it the Pareto principle. 20% effort, 80% return. So that's what they influence the prioritization of the station. Which are those stations? Tutuka, Duva, Majuba, Matla, Kendal, Arnold, and Kriel, and Kusile. And you'll see that as a result of the efforts that we've made, some of them have graduated out of this category of priority stations, problematic priority stations. And in fact, Matla has become one of our best performing power stations, notwithstanding the incident that we had just the other day. Kusile has graduated also out of those problematic power stations, and really Kusile was as a result of those 3 units, remember, that had to be taken out as a result of the challenges on the flue gas desulfurization units, and then we got an interim reprieve from the Minister of Fisheries and Forestry, allowed us to have construct a temporary stack and allow us an opportunity first to have the units performing, giving us the megawatts that we want, and also making sure that we are able to return if you like, the original design of the FGD, as we had fixed the chimney that represented in our own calculation a major danger to, if you like, to the power stations, because we needed to do structural assessment on the chimney, ensure that the FGD also works, and in fact we have made progress in that regard. And then we said one of the areas that required attention was the the long-term operation of Kubek. So we started with Kubek unit number 1, took it out, went through the rigors of the licensing requirements. Remember that Kubek had a life of 40 years, so we want to extend it by another 20 years. So we decouple the units, so we don't treat Kubek as a monolithic power stations. We isolate the Kubek unit number 1, unit number 2, and we went out to seek an extension of life of these 2 units. So we started with unit number 1, and we said that if we succeed, then we've got another 20 years of a generation coming from nuclear, and we now know that we have received the go-ahead from the regulator, and in fact this has been achieved. And then we also said, to the extent that we don't have the skills, so once we map what the problem power stations are, what are the kind of failures that are experienced in the individual power stations, and you juxtapose that against the skills that are required in areas where we find that the skills deficit. So what resides in Eskom internally is not sufficient to help us to resolve this problem. Then you go outside looking for the additional skills. So we thought that it is important that although we know that Eskom has got the highest density of engineers in the country, the most experienced, there might be other areas where we need some assistance. So it's important that we are able to collaborate with the external parties who are deliberate in that effort. It's not your normal procurement of goods and services, but in fact it's part of a deliberate effort. So we thought let's ensure that there's a skills match, so the problem statement, how we want to resolve this problem, and also we did the skills matching, and to the extent that there were misalignments, they were able to get some skills from outside. So really that's what drove this intervention. So what are these transversal experiences? First is that a plan has to be in place. That plan must be measurable, actionable, and then there has to be consequences if you are unable to achieve that plan. And then you must get the kind of leadership across all levels. So from the executive authority level, the board with its fiduciary duties and ability to articulate a generation recovery plan, and also from management point of view, from the point of execution, and also providing the necessary incentives. And then once the leadership is in place, they are able to design a plan that is helping us to resolve the short-term problem as it contributes to a long-term solution. And that's what Eskom has done. And I guess that is a template that can be taken to other SOEs as part of sharing the learning experiences. I think it's going to be very useful going forward. And what has been the results of that? So the result of that is we have seen that the energy availability, the factor is going in the right direction. I did say about 62.5. Our intention is to get it to about 65, so that there's an appreciation that we are on the right path. So there has to be a target against which you should be measured. Of course, the lights are on, but we want to do significantly better than just the lights being on, but we want to help the South African economy to grow. So against those targets we have set ourselves, we have successfully executed Kubek unit number 1, the licensing, extension of license. So now we know that the 980 megawatts from Kubek unit number 1 is guaranteed to the country for the next 20 years, as we are working on unit number 2. And then we're able to sustain the excellent performance of Medupi. Medupi was becoming a bit more, like I said, it was one of those power stations that were performing. So it's important that you are able to maintain that excellent, if you like, performance. And also with Letabo, also with Matimba. Remember what I said earlier on, protect those that are working. Make sure that they don't fall into a category of those that are underperforming, or those that contribute to the catastrophic failure of the grid from a megawatts point of view. So we're able to protect those. So again, we tick that box. And of course, we embedded the principles of operational excellence. So that operational excellence, we set ourselves what is the target of the number of failures, not just per power stations, but per unit. making sure that we are very deliberate, ensuring that we get the right skills, ensuring that you are able to provide the right incentive for the kind of performance that you have set yourself as a target, that people must be rewarded for that performance. And then in the process, we are addressing the internal skills gap. So I did say that as you do that matrix of trying to understand what are your common areas of failure and what are the skills available to address those common areas of failure, we're able to discover that we can do a lot more in ensuring that we've got the skills as opposed to relying from outside the assistance. Of course, in the immediate, you needed that outside assistance. But over a period of time, you need to be self-reliant. I mean, an organization the size of Eskom must be self-reliant, self-sufficient. So we are addressing those skills gap. And that skills gap is informed by our articulation of what constitutes the problem statement in the immediate and the kind of ambition that we want going into the future. So it's not just limited to addressing the load shedding problem, but it's also about the kind of future that we want. Remember, what is that future? It's greener, it's cleaner, and it's a mix of technologies. So it's important that Eskom gears itself for that. And then prevent the outage slips, which contributes to the UCLF. And I've been able to show you that the kind of performance that we are seeing, it speaks to the fact that the number of failures and repeat failures are coming down. So the team has been able to achieve that. And Kusile Unit 1, 2, and 3 was key in this the recovery area, 2,400 megawatts, three units, each packing about 800 megawatts. Like I said, we got that temporary reprieve from Department of Fishery, Forestry, and the Environment, and then we're able to get the benefit of that those 3 units, 2,400 additional megawatts. Again, we tick that box, and then the synchronization of Kusile Unit number 5, we've been able to achieve that. Now we're going to Kusile Unit number 6. So we take the Unit number 5, so we are getting a benefit of that 800 megawatts. And then we had to review the plant shutdown date. Remember that we had committed to an agenda of greening generation in the country, and set ourselves that by this date, X number of megawatts will go out. And of course, what that generation, the shutdown did not respond to is, as you take out these megawatts, how are you going to replace them? And it must be one for one, so like for like, if you like, from a generation perspective. So what I mean is that we know that we had accelerated the new generation capacity coming from renewables, wind and solar, but we know there are technical limitations. They are intermittent, they are non-dispatchable. Like now, we're experiencing inclement weather, at least to the north of the country. So you don't have the benefit of those rooftop solar solutions for those who have installed them at their households, various industries. So you must draw from the grid. So it's important that you get the mix right. So as you shut down, you must be able to ensure that you are protecting, if you like, the backbone, and that backbone of yours is a sustainable supply of electricity. And we know that coal provides that answer. We know that nuclear provides that answer. Gas to power provides that answer, but we are not sitting pretty in that, on that score. We don't have a gas to power, if you like, generation capacity. All we have is a diesel that we are burning, and I said is extraordinary expensive. So it's important that you are able to protect base load as you are onboarding renewables, and then you are fixing your grid. It's modernization. The greater the penetration of renewables, the greater the risk to the grid. So you need to protect the grid, modernize it, and ensure that it's able to accommodate new generation capacity, but also expand it. And that's why this announcement I'll be making on bid window number 7, very important, new generation capacity. Bid window number 2, battery storage, very important, because once we have renewables paired with battery storage, what that does, it approximates conditions of base load. And that's the kind of what I call hybridization of generation in the country. So it's about this mix that we're talking about. So these are the results that we got. We are getting closer to that 65 energy availability factor. But we need to think beyond this. For the country to grow at 2% point of the GDP to grow by 2 percentage points, to get investments into the country, to get people working, to increase capacity utilization at various factories, you need the reliability of this supply. And in addition to that, you need new generation capacity. So in relation to our ambition for the EAF, for the financial year 25, we want to achieve 70%. And I'll show you how we think we can get close to that 70% of new generation capacity that is coming on stream, and the recovery of some of the units that have been out. So one is the need for us to return Medupi unit number 4. I think has been out for about 3 to about 5 years or so as a result of a catastrophic fire there. So it's important that we return it. And I'll give you what those timelines are that we have set for ourselves internally. Remember that it's one thing to set an ambition, but we must be very explicit about what those timelines are so that we hold ourselves internally accountable, and also myself, when I communicate to the country, I'm able to say we set ourselves to return X number of megawatts by this date, and this is how far we are. And I think talks to the kind of transparency that we want. And then commercial operation of unit number 5, like I said, that we have ticked. We are synchronizing unit number 6, and I'll give you the dates in relation to that, and continuous focus on current and future skills. So we're not where we're at. We need to build on those skills going forward. Like I said, an emerging area of focus now is the challenges on the distribution side, which I'll speak to a bit later. So you need that skills to support a renewed Eskom. As we reset this Eskom, when I say reset, from a leadership governance point of view, from a financial performance point of view, but also meeting the requirements of an evolving electricity industry, not just in the country, but in the world, and also in the context of the Electricity Regulation Act. I think it's important that Eskom continues to be a big and sizable player in that context. Of course, there's additional competition, which is great for the performance of the economy, and in fact should be great for the consumer. Once there's competition, the classic says these prices should come down. Of course, doesn't always work in that sense, but I'm just saying the classics will dictate that that should be the case. And then unit number 2, Quebec, we need to return it. Like I said, long-term extension in this instance. So we will return it, and we'll still go through the rigors of the requirements of the national, the nuclear regulator, to ensure that we meet what the requirements are, so that there's a safe operation of this Quebec going forward. So that's what's going to define, if you like, the next phase, 2025. You will see that when we come sometime next year, we'll also talk beyond 2025. So Eskom being a player in relation to new generation capacity on cleaner technologies. So we'll articulate what that is and what will be the share of cleaner technologies within the Eskom fleet. So I'm not accounting for what's happening in the private sector. Of course, the two must be read together, but I think we'll isolate Eskom for obvious reasons, because it's still a dominant player also on the generation side. So if you like, too big to fail. So we must do everything reasonably possible to ensure that we protect it, because by definition, we're protecting the South African economy. And like I said, I mean, as a result of all of these things, these are some of the highlights. The number of no load shedding days, 272, a milestone, 5 years best performance that we've experienced, and the EAF of 62.5. We want to get to 65, reduction of diesel by about 16 billion rands, and then we'll continue to invest in the new skills. So these are greener, these are skills that are going to support this clean green transition. 7 gigawatts reduction in unplanned capacity loss factor. So we've been able to whittle down if you like, the number of losses, aggregate losses from 18,000 megawatts to about 11,000 megawatts. And that's why you are seeing the kind of performance that we are seeing. And also the planned maintenance higher year on year. So this must give you the comfort. It must give you the comfort that we still continue to do the right things. That, in fact, as I speak to you now, the planned maintenance is at 17%. Of the total generation capacity. So we're not dropping the ball. We're thinking about tomorrow. We're thinking about the future. We need to invest in ensuring that these units will perform going into the future. No, don't rest on your laurels and be complacent and say, no, there's no load shedding, 272 days, a milestone in 5 years. No. We want to get to a point that we completely eliminate load shedding in our vocabulary, or if we speak about load shedding, we speak about load shedding in past terms. We speak about load shedding as an experience that we don't have to go back to. So that will be our relationship with load shedding. But going forward is about sustainability of supply, affordable supply, and reliable supply. And then, like I said, it is important that, at least from a planning point of view, we don't speak in aggregate terms. Of course, when I come to the public, I speak about the generating ability and capacity in aggregate terms. I put everything in one basket. But maybe just to give you an insight, then we go station by station, and this is just to show you. Remember I said there were those power stations that we prioritize. This has been the performance of those power stations. Remember, what was our target? Our target was to bring down the number of failures, what we call the unplanned capacity loss factor. Well, how have we done against those? So I think it's important that you have this appreciation. The first one was Tutuka. You can see that the losses were sitting at about 2,600 megawatts. We brought them down by 60%. You go to Kendal, we brought them down by about 35%. You go to Majuba, we brought them down by 33%. You go to Duva, brought it down by about 30%. You go to Kusile, brought it down by 52%. When I say brought it down, so the units are now beginning to give us additional megawatts. And that's why I talk about the unplanned capacity loss factor averaging about 11,000 gigawatts. We have moved from 18,000. It's as a result of this collective work that the team has been doing. At Grill brought it down, you can see, about 3%. So we're not doing as well as we should. So that's important, that although the net picture is positive, but we don't rely on the net picture. We're going to isolate individual units in that stable. So you can see Grill is borderline. And then Arnold, in fact, we have not been able to achieve the kind of targets that we have set for ourselves. And in fact, it has deteriorated by 22%. And Matla, of course, an improvement of 35%. What is the point I'm making here? Is that if you look at the net picture, you'll be complacent and say, no, we're fine. I'm saying, no, we don't end there. We go deeper. And we know that we've got a problem in Grill. We know that we've got a problem in Arnold. And we'll fix that problem. But what the team has done is that as we're fixing that problem, we have done remarkably well that the general public does not see the effects of us underperforming at Arnold and Grill, and that the underperformance will be expressed in load shedding. You are not seeing it. But internally we know we're sitting with this problem. And that's why when I come to the public, I say it's important that we are very transparent and easy in our communication of this messaging. When I say we're not necessarily out of the woods, I want to see green, and these numbers, in fact, must be greater than what we are seeing. Of course, 65% improvement is phenomenal. 50% improvement is phenomenal. But I don't necessarily think that when you are in the 30s, it's phenomenal. So we really want to continue to bring it down. So I think it's important that I get to share that with you, that we are transfixed on the resolution of these challenges. Of course, we communicated the summer outlook. So essentially there are two periods from a planning point of view. There's a winter outlook and then there's a summer outlook. Eskom communicated the summer outlook, and in that summer outlook, Eskom makes the point that if the total number of losses are 13,000 megawatts and below, we should not see load shedding. and we're averaging about anything that window, if you like, we had best periods 8,900 and then up to 12,500. So we're significantly lower than the best case scenario, and that's why you are not seeing this load shedding. And of course, in instances where there are those incidents like we're seeing in Matla, they get to be absorbed, if you like, in the that we have created for ourselves. So what those incidents did was to eat in our surplus without necessarily leading us to load shedding. But then what this says, the kind of performance that we're seeing is that it is possible for us to be able to support the South African economy if it were to grow by anything between 2.5 to 3.5 percentage points once we reach that energy availability factor of 70%. Remember, load shedding, what it did was to reverse, if you like, contract South Africa's GDP. And then once we get to a situation where there's sustained period of no load shedding, there's greater confidence in the South African economy, and the investment hopefully comes back, and then you want to go back to pre-load shedding days in relation to economic performance. So that's the next stage. But the ultimate is to ensure that we support the growth of the South African economy. And for us to achieve that, we need to get an EAF to about 70%. And I did say we're not there yet, but we are confident that by the next financial year, starting now in April of 2025, we should get close to that 25%, 70%, I'm sorry, of EAF. So what are the immediate possibilities for us to get additional megawatts? So how are we going to get to that 70% to support the South African economy? Kubek unit number 2 is out because refueling, the steam generator, I know that has been successfully refueled. We have closed it. I think we have started, then we'll share with us. The last time I checked, we're about to start unit number 2, and then we should get, if you like, these megawatts by early January. So remember that this 930 is sitting in the megawatts that are not available. Now we're bringing these megawatts on stream. And then Kusile unit number 6, this is new generation capacity. Doesn't get to be accounted for in the megawatts that are out because it was never available in the first instance. So remember that Kusile is still a construction site. So unit number 6 is the last of the units. I did say earlier that we were able to synchronize unit number 5, and now unit number 5 is commercial. Remember, for a period of 3 months, you still do your testing, you are synchronizing, there are errors there, you fix those errors. Once you say you give it the thumbs up, then it becomes commercially available. Then we start to account for it as the megawatts that should be available. When it's not available, it brings down the EAF. Unit number 6, we don't account for it as available, so the team, they'll synchronize it, and then we'll get, it will still give us the megawatts, they'll take it out, fix it, if you like, you are able to address the snags in civil engineering terms, and once it's right, you give it the thumbs up, a period of about 3 months, then it becomes commercially available. Then we account for it now on the megawatts that are available. So that's an additional 800 megawatts. So that's new. And then Medupi number 4, it's what we had before. So when I say the UCLF is sitting at that 18,000 megawatts previously, now at 11,000, I'm also accounting in that number, this 794. Because it was there, available, so we started to account for it, and then we lost it for a period. Now we are returning it. When do we anticipate to return it? We anticipate rather to return it by March or April of 2025. So if you like, the last beginning of the second quarter of next year. So if you put all of this together, it's about 2,500 megawatts that we are going to get of generation capacity. And from the UCLF point of view, 1,600 megawatts of new, or 1,700 megawatts of new generation capacity, of a reduction in UCLF. That's a Kubek unit number 2 and Medupi unit number 4. And then on the aggregate generation, 800 megawatts from Kusile unit number 6. So we're getting an additional 2,500 megawatts. So you can see now, We are getting very close to that target of 70% EAF, and then we must continue to do those improvements. Those power stations, I did tell you that we're not getting the kind of results we want there at Kendall. We're not getting the kind of results we know that at Arnold, and then we should be then, once we get it right, we should be close to 70%. So when we mention 70%, EAF is not an arbitrary number. It's a number that is derived from science, and it's a number that is engineering science. Let me qualify that. And then we know that we have the skills to get it to that level, and that's the level of confidence that we have. And the team internally, they know they get to be measured against those targets. So it's important that we communicate to the public, but the public has got two big interests. First is that there will not be load shedding. Second is that you must contribute to the stimulation of the South African economy so that we are able to reach these levels of 2.5 to 3.5 GDP growth going into the future. As I move to conclusion, our biggest challenge now is distribution. So distribution, previously, we were not seeing this challenge in a manner that we are seeing now. What do I mean by that? So everything was clustered under load shedding. So there's load shedding, the lights are off for a particular period. Once you are able to get 270 days of load shedding, you've got a clearer picture. It crystallizes. Then you have load reduction. You begin to see centers of challenges where there's overloading downstream. So we know we're sitting with a big problem that requires our attention. Of course, you can make a valid argument that you should have addressed these issues in parallel. Yes, you are absolutely right, but we also had to attach weighting. What is that weighting? That the primary concern was to get the lights on at an aggregate level. You get that, and then we continue to ensure that then the focus is on distribution. I want to make the point that it's particularly unhelpful to go out and seek to be adventurous and say, we'll resolve everything at a go. Simply not possible. Well, it's possible. But I think what is possible is for us to ensure that you streamline what the interventions are. You prioritize what you think in your own calculation is an immediate challenge. And you know that load shedding was throttling the South African economy. Now we get into the issues of distribution. So we need to ensure that from a demand side management point of view, we're able to continue to accelerate that program. Remember that part of those outcomes, there's outcome number 4. That talks to the rollout of rooftop solar solution. So we should not drop the ball on that. So we should roll that out. Behind the meter intervention for your own consumption. But also with demand side management, the rollout of smart meters, it helps us to remotely ensure that we provide additional layer of technical capacity to the system operator to ensure that we are able to protect the grid going forward. And then the major challenge of existential problem that is facing us, and we spoke about this ad nauseum the last time when we delivered on the occasion of the delivery of the annual financial statement last week, Thursday, is the municipal debt problem. Let me tell you, people are going through an exceptionally difficult period. A lot of us here, at least on this podium, were privileged. From here, we're going to be spending time with our families. When we get home, there's access. You open the fridge, you have a choice of what to eat, what to drink. The majority of the people who are watching us today don't have that benefit. So it's a real problem. It's a genuine problem. The group CFO was sharing with me because he was at the cold phase of the consultation process of NERSA. So you have pensioners earning 2,190. And we know that the average, the cost of electricity for an average household low income is 1,200. So he earns or she earns 2,190. You take out 1,200. And you know they are diligent payers. They start by paying this. So you have wiped out half of what the state has given to the pensioners. So on the one hand, with our expanded flow of if you like, the social wage. The state gives 2,190. On the other hand, we take it back. We take half of that. It has no impact. And let me tell you, I mean, the suggestion that, of course, there are those who choose not to pay. I'm separating them from the great majority who can't pay. So it's important that we fashion a solution to address this. Accept that you have an economic problem, And the great majority of people have to make choices. Like I said, they are not going to be celebrating. It's a Black Christmas for them. And then we'll be switching them off. And then next, whatever the tariff increase is, whether it's 10, it's 15, it's 30, it's 36, really they still can't afford what is before them. So we're just pushing them deeper and deeper into conditions of poverty. And we have agreed ourselves and Eskom that we think we can do better with the municipalities. It's not a panacea, it's not a silver bullet, but people are finding it difficult. So it will be irresponsible of me just to stand here and say we're aggressively going to get this money. It's not possible. So I think we must find new ways of doing it. And I did say that there's great alignment between ourselves and Eskom. We'll share that with SALGA. I'm confident that we'll find that alignment with SALGA and introduce an intervention. Remember that priority number 2 of the 7th administration is to fight poverty and reduce the cost of living. It's very tough. And utilities, the cost of utilities, electricity and water, is pushing people deeper and deeper into poverty. So that's the admission I'm making. It's unsustainable, it's untenable. You are creating a perfect storm that can undermine a legitimate government. So once you are unable to solve it over a period of time, it becomes a national security problem. It's an existential problem for the country. So it's in our collective interest to do this, to resolve this question. So most of us after this will be celebrating. The great majority won't be celebrating because of the economic situation. I really want to say we feel their pain, we hear their cries, we understand their anger. We will resolve this problem. I give them the assurance. And I'm confident that we have made our views with NERSA. It will not come this increase at 36%. I'm more than confident. I've said that to the country, putting my head on the block. Confident that will not come at those levels. But we'll allow NERSA to make that determination. And they did say that in early January. And then we must address the issues of energy losses and reduction. These are technical losses. These are issues around load reduction. Like I say, for an average person, when I started here, I said 272 days of no load shedding. The best performance in 5 years. There are people who are listening to me and say, but the president, the minister is talking hogwash. I don't have electricity. What are you talking about? So you can call it by any other name. Load shedding, load reduction. There are periods in the day where our people don't have electricity. So I will not stand here and say, no, the president says we must resolve load shedding. The problem of load reduction is my problem. The problem of people not being able to afford electricity is my problem. And by extension, I mean the problem of the ministry. We'll come and resolve that. And then the issues of human capital and ethical high performance. So those are the soft issues I'm talking about that are receiving attention. And of course, you know that the next round of the Electricity Regulation Amendment Act, the kind of interventions we'll be making, successful separation of NTCSA. Now we're moving on the legal separation of distribution. We need to find a new model on operating model on distribution. Very significant part. There are municipalities, I went to Tokologo the other day in the Free State. The municipalities just don't have the means, the technical means to run an electricity department. We want to work with them. And I did say to them, we're not coming there to take over. Although they had taken a council resolution to say Eskom must take over. I said, no, it's not in your interest. Eskom is coming to work with you as a partner to capacitate you. And when we come back with this intervention, we'll say a period of 3 to 5 years, we'll do the following. By the time we leave that municipality, it's able to provide the electricity function. It's able to collect on its own. It's able to pay Eskom. And it's able to reuse, redeploy this collected money to meet social needs, social infrastructure. So it's in our interest that the municipalities must function. So we're not coming here to lament the state of municipalities, but is to work with them to ensure that we're able to address this. And then the distribution business must gear itself for the EV market. So if we are going to say we are going to have electric vehicles, there must be charging stations. So if you like, there must be petrol stations for this. So the model must, the distribution model, the new model, I know that Bragep and Mr. Bala, they are working on that. You must gear yourself to that. of course, from generation, you must gear yourself to say there's new demand that is coming. So as you transition to electric vehicles, there's new demand that you are creating, and you must be able to meet that transition. Imagine a situation where there's a proliferance of EVs. I'm driving to my rural Limpopo, I get to what is now Kranskop, and I get there, they say, sorry, Mr. Ramokgopa, there's no electricity, doc, so you can't charge. I'm stranded. Imagine you are getting to a garage there, they tell you, hey, sorry, there's no fuel. So it doesn't, so you are undermining, if you like, the success of that program. So they must gear themselves for that, and also the launch of the distribution energy trader for market stimulation. And then we'll work on the modernization of the distribution grid. I'd made the point that it's important that we are able to modernize it, the distribution network, the smart grids. We'll be launching the 2 pilots there in the 2 villages in Limpopo. I think that's the future. A combination of our ability to draw from our renewable resources in the form of solar, store it, and then provide to these rural communities. We did say that also we've got an ambition of achieving true universal access. 30 years of a democratic government, we have not achieved universal access. Universal access, I mean every household has got access to electricity that is available and affordable. 2 important requirements. It must be available and affordable. That's very important. And I'll say how we want to achieve that. And of course, enhance customer experience. We lamented the fact that when during the period of transitioning from the legacy systems of the meters to the new dispensation of smart meters, you could see that there's a gulf between the Eskom and communities. I think we need to close it. Better communication, Eskom offices available, of Eskom being responsive. Of course, the experiences differ from one area to the other, but by our own admission, I think we're able to do much better than we have been able to achieve. And then what are the policy interventions for the ministry as I move to conclusion? We are concluding the IRP. I'm happy to say that the consultations are done. We are taking it to NEDLEC, and I'm confident that the first quarter of next year, we are going to publish that IRP. So we are ready. The only step is NEDLEC and then to cabinet. So the first quarter of next year, by March the latest, it should be out. I think it's very important to document that. And then the gas master plan, again, similar to the IRP process, but this is a bit behind. We're still going to have qualitative engagement, and this one we're targeting the second quarter of next year. There are major issues on the gas side, and issues that requires immediate attention. The gas cliff that I keep on referring to, working with the major players, and you have seen that we have been to countries that are prepared to give us the molecules. You need to resolve the issues at what price point are those molecules. There are risks that you are exposed to, the cost of the commodity, the currency risk. You need to resolve all of that. You must resolve also who's going to be the aggregator, and one of the biggest enablers on the gas side is the gas to power solutions, because it takes up the volumes, and by definition should bring down the unit cost of the molecules. It's also about the location of the facility, where we're going to receive it, Mozambique, Richards Bay, and all of that. So those are issues that are confronting us, but we are far advanced on those. Once we are able to go through the necessary consultation process, I'll be able to share to the general public where we at. And then the electricity pricing policy and the free basic electricity. 2023, I think, or 2021, that's the last time 2001, I'm sorry. That's when we introduced the free basic electricity, 50 kilowatt hour of electricity. I mean, things have changed. Our view is that we should be at about 150 to 200 kilowatt hours of free electricity, and to provide the kind of relief I spoke about earlier on, of the pensioners, of the poor. So we'll be making a proposal in that range. Of course, you must cost it because someone must pay for it, and it's national treasury. So we're working on the review of that, and also the electricity pricing policy that's gone through a net like this one. We're just doing, I think, the final stakeholder community engagement. There's some degree of revision. We must do that. We're confident that by the first quarter of 2025, we should be out in the public. So these are the three broad policy issues that are receiving attention. Quarter one up to quarter two, we hope to achieve that. And then the big one, well, another one, not the big one because all of them are big, is the ITP pilot, the independent transmission program pilot. So you know that we have done the market sounding RFI, has been issued, closes at the 28th of February. Next year we want to do, and it will guide what will constitute the next steps. But we want to do our first RFP before the end of next year. So that's major now. So we're now entering into this arena of ensuring that we are going to expand and modernize the grid and find bespoke financing solutions on how you are going to do that. It's a big ticket item, preliminary indication, 390 billion rand. The fiscals can't carry it. The NTCSA balance sheet can't carry it. So we're doing that market exercise. So I'm confident that, and then we'll issue the regulations in relation to how we will be dealing with this, at least in the long term. And then the issues around the universal access strategy and implementation plan. I made the point earlier on, 30 years into the life of a democratic government, we have not truly achieved universal access. There are villages. I'm not talking about new villages, old villages that have never had electricity. So working with the team led by DDG Kekana, we are designing what we call the INEP program. The Integrated National Electrification Program. That grant, we are guaranteed 4 billion rand per annum. So we're setting up a project management unit, and is going to use all types of technology. So we're not going to use the conventional approach. When you say you are connected, you should be connected to the grid. When in fact there are technology solutions that allows us to think beyond the grid. The pilots that will be launching in Limpopo are not connected to the grid. It's solar combined with BESS, and we are able to roll it out. So that's what we are doing. I say we think, because we are still working on those numbers. Depending who you speak to, you still have about 2.1 million houses that don't have electricity, and then 3 million houses. Something somewhere there in between. We'll resolve it. But what we know is that 4 billion rand per annum over 5 years, 20 billion will not be sufficient. We have worked out what the unit cost is, even having brought it down. So you need to bring in other players into that space to help us to achieve this universal access. We will set ourselves a target. And that target, I want to say now, we want to achieve universal access in the 7th administration. Of course, that's a moving target, remember. There will be new settlements coming. So we'll define what is the percentage of houses that will be connected. For us to say is universal access is a moving target, is a structural thing, I mean, if you come to think about it. And then the issues of municipal sustainability. And then I want to conclude by making the following announcement. Like I said, what I've been saying now has to do with Eskom and has to do with municipalities. But you need new generation capacity for you to be able to sustain this. You can't be over-reliant on Eskom. It means that if Eskom fails, then everyone else is failed. Of course, Eskom still is the anchor. If Eskom achieves that 70% EAF, it will anchor the South African economy. But you want to de-risk the energy mix rather. So I did say that it's important that we get to accelerate the bid windows. Working with Mr. Magoro and the team at the IPP, we think we know what some of the touch points are. And once we engage, go back, re-engage with stakeholders, including internally NTCSA and the various departments that makes a contribution in how we do the bid windows, and we are aligned, we are able to truncate, if you like, the processes that it takes for us to get to financial close. And it takes a lot of engagement also with the financial sector and also the developers. I think you can imagine. It's a number of players in that space, but from our side, we have a sense. So we went out bid window number 5. We wanted to get 5,000 megawatts, and then it was technology specific. 1,800 must come from solar photovoltaic, 3,000 of that must come from onshore wind. On the wind one, let me say the following, that the prices that we had received are a bit exorbitant or pricey, or more than what we think we can afford. So we're not going to, if you like, announce preferred bidder status for wind. We think there's room for negotiation. So Mr. Magore and the team will go back to those who have submitted. Remember that as we do this, we must protect the consumer, protect NTCSA as a procurer. So we've determined what that point is. So I'm sure that Mr. Magore will and the team can expand on that. So what I mean now is to talk to the 1,800 of photovoltaic. We received around 48 bids, totaling about 10.2 gigawatts. What this says is that there's a huge appetite by private sector to participate. Although the window we said we want so much, almost double of what we said we wanted. And then, of course, like I said, 40 of those were solar PV and 8 were wind. And they were wind submissions. And the closing date was on the 15th. And then as a result of our assessment and grid capacity, only 23 bidders with grid access then form part of the pool that went to the next the next stage. 19 of these came from solar PV bidders, and then 4 of these were wind. So you can see what that statement says. It's an issue that we must resolve internally. Is that whilst there is this appetite, the limiting factor is grid capacity. And that's why that the ITP, going out to the market, say, help us to find a way of how best we can expand the grid, is very important. Because now grid is becoming a binding constraint. It's going to undermine the ability of the country to benefit from these renewable energy resources. So there's the PV, they are totaling 1,760 of that 1,800 that we set aside. And then we mentioned the preferred bidders, Highveld Solar Consortium, Palladium Solar Consortium, Copper Solar 1 Consortium, Vanadium Solar 1 Consortium, Middle Point Solar PV, Mercury Solar PV 2, Onderstepoort Solar 1 Consortium, and Onderstepoort Solar 2 Consortium. And then we also get to share with you what those the megawatts are. And of course, you can see now in the provinces of Mpumalanga, Limpopo, the Free State, and Northwest. So you can see now the Capes are not here. The Capes are not here because we have exhausted grid capacity. Now we are going north there. I went to my rural village there, so we're getting closer to the villages there. Yeah, but like I said, I mean, on a more serious note, I think the capacity issues needs to be resolved. And then on the battery storage, you know that this is the second bid window of the battery energy storage independent power producer procurement program. This bid targeted substations, and we're very specific in the northwest areas. The northwest areas in Eskom language, we talk about the northwest, the Free State, and Gauteng. So we're very deliberate about where we wanted this. And then, of course, we're specific to those particular 8 sites. Those are the 8 sites. And for one site, we only have one bidder that was appointed. The target 615 megawatts, and we're able, the substations, the OSIS around, the project name, Roy Copies, BES, Mulilo, Mercury, Velder Vident, the BES, Arte BS Fontaine, Gainfa, Leopold, and we get home. So that's the part of the 615 megawatts that we went out for. So I think it's important that there
you have it, a good news story to tell to end the year. And what the minister has termed short-term pain, long-term gain has led to 272 days of no load shedding, and says that is the 5-year best performance of the power utility. And of course also went there to say they started off on on an exceptionally low base, says the country saw intensified load shedding and they recorded a significant loss throughout the greater start of the year. And, there's light at the end of the tunnel now as they will record a surplus at the end of the financial year. And says it's not just about keeping the lights on, no, it's also about supporting and growing the economy of the country. Also touching there on a hot potato, and there's the price of electricity, saying further increases to the price of electricity will further plunge many households into poverty. Something must be done about this, and of course sealing it there.